Hey guys, I just saw the amazing Spider-Man movie, and let me tell you, it really is amazing. Okay, that's the spoiler-free version. Now there's gonna be spoilers, so yeah. Anyway, this was a really cool movie. One of the things I love most about it is just how it's exploding with character constantly. Let's address a couple of criticisms first. Right off the bat, when we saw the early trailers of this, even like early screenshots of it, everyone was going like, oh, this is just gonna be a rip-off of The Dark Knight, blah, 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 blah. But no, it's not like that. It's a little dark, but only in a way that makes it kind of realistic. It's still very flashy, it's still very colorful, it's got a really cool atmosphere that feels like just a really cool comic book. It's just a grand old time. And it honestly doesn't feel like a ripoff of The Dark Knight or whatever to me. It doesn't feel that way at all. So people who are just jumping on the bandwagon and saying that for the sake of it, they can go piss off. And let's see. The criticism that it just retreads a lot of the same ground needlessly and just, goes along with a lot of the same characters and so on. No, it's not like that at all. There are so many fresh new characters in this, and even the characters that did appear in the old movies have fresh takes on them that make them even more likable in this movie than they were in the older movies. And before we get to that, let's see, another criticism. A lot of people, they're like, oh, they waste time just meandering about, talking about whatever happened to Peter's parents and so on, just a lot of shit that we don't care about. Yeah, we don't want to know what goes on in Peter's life. We don't want to know about the personal side of things. We just want to see action. We just want to see constant explosions, like boom, boom, boom. Look, The Avengers is a really awesome movie. It's really epic in that kind of way, but this movie is so much stronger because of the emotion. But again, I'll get to that later on in the review. Let's talk about the characters. First, let's talk about, Peter Parker. Andrew Garfield's interpretation of him is really likable. I mean, I actually found myself more emotionally attached to this character than to Tobey Maguire's version, believe it or not. And I guess part of that is just that this guy is more believable. He's still kind of geeky, but he's not that spick and span, 50s haircut style kind of nerd that they had in the old movies to give it that good old-timey kind of campy feel. This version of him is still kind of geeky, but he's really frazzled, and he's still a misfit, but as sheepish as he is, he's still just a guy. He's not a guy that everyone makes a point of making fun of. He's just a guy that they're kind of okay with. You still got some people like Flash Thompson who pick on him. But like this Peter is actually kind of ballsy. There was a scene very early on where he stood up to Flash who was picking on another kid. Peter didn't have to do this, but he did. He didn't even do it in a way like he was trying to show off to everybody and basically pwn Flash or whatever. He didn't have his powers at the time or anything like that. He was just standing his ground like, no, this is wrong. Just be cool, get away from him. And it was just a really good scene. And there's a lot of great scenes like that in this movie. So yeah, overall, Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker was really great, and more importantly, he was great as Spider-Man. A lot of people, they hear Spider-Man, they think Tobey Maguire. And Tobey Maguire was great as their version of Peter Parker, but he sucked as Spider-Man because he just didn't feel very much like the character from the comics. Spider-Man, for better or worse, is a clown. He punches a guy out, and then he goes, that's all, folks, and swings away, and tries to leave a good first impression on all the people who watch him beat up that guy, so that they don't find him scary. He just makes them laugh. And he actually does this in this movie. In the old Spider-Man movies, they had him crack jokes a few times, but it was just so just so hollow and empty. In this movie, he's actually funny. So he makes a good, unique, fresh take on Peter Parker that isn't like retreading the same ground of the older movies, and he makes a good Spider-Man. So yeah, great character there. Now for the other characters. Gwen Stacy. Very different from Mary Jane. Very different from the Gwen Stacy of Spider-Man 3. Just a really cool, fresh character. And I really like her. It's like, she's just a really good, likable person in this. And she and Peter, Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield have such a great chemistry together. There's so many movies where they have the kissy-wissy, mushy make-out scene that just makes me cringe. Like, oh, this feels so unnatural. You can tell they're just acting. Like in the Thor movie. The kiss in that movie. Oh, God, it just made me cringe. But here, no, I didn't mind at all, because these two are just so cute together. It feels natural and genuine. They have such a great chemistry that you can even, sympathize with them. It's like, aww. and the guy who plays her father, Dennis Leary, as the chief of police, whatever. He was a good character as well. I just really like him. There's a lot of characters in this movie that are really likable. Let's talk about Curt Connors before we talk about anything else. As the Lizard, first of all, I think the Lizard was a really unique choice for a villain. Because if you think about it, he's basically the same thing that Spider-Man is, only he's a more extreme case of it. Spider-Man still looks like a human, even though he has the traits of a spider. The Lizard is like Spider-Man, except, he actually looks like a lizard. He's just mutated so far. And so you've got a hero, and then a more extreme version of the hero. And not in the sense that Venom is like an extreme evil version of Spider-Man. This is like, there's something more pure and raw about this. And it's just really cool. Not to mention, we wanted to see the Lizard in the old movies. We wanted them to make a fourth one featuring some interpretation of the Lizard because we got Connors as a character in those movies, but we never quite got that. We got them in the Spider-Man 3 game, but whatever. And so yeah, it's good that they finally got around to it, and I like this interpretation of Curt Connors. One thing I like about him is, even though he does kind of go crazy, there are still moments that redeem him. Right off the bat, he wants to help people. He doesn't just care about getting his arm back. He wants to get everyone's arms back. He wants to cure Parkinson's and all sorts of other things. And the lizards, they're the key to it. And well, there's a scene where someone wants to take his project, and even though he's not prepared to test it on humans, they want to do it right away. And they're like, well, we'll just go to some hospital and test it on a bunch of patients that no one really gives a shit about and just see how it turns out. He's like, no, that's not acceptable, we can't do that. And they basically take his project away from him right there and then. He wasn't even considering testing it on himself, let alone anyone just yet. He was going to test it on just on various other animals, and maybe even primates, but not humans yet. But he basically thought, well, even if I end up sacrificing myself, I'm going to see if it works on me, and then they're not going to have to test it on those other people. So then he injects himself with it, and things go horribly wrong. And he does kind of end up going crazy, but I really like that moment because it was such a good redeeming moment for him. And that's another thing. A lot of people in this movie who you'd think you're supposed to hate, who you'd think are supposed to be antagonists, have redeeming qualities and redeeming moments. Like Flash Thompson. In the old movies, he was just this horrid throwaway character that existed just for you to hate him. That's the only reason he was there. It's like, duh, I'm a bully. And they throw him away, and then you never see him again, and it's just really simple-minded, that interpretation of him. In this, Flash Thompson starts out as like a douchebaggy character you're supposed to hate, but he has a much greater presence than in the old movies. He appears in like 4 or 5 scenes, and he and Peter eventually manage to make peace. When Uncle Ben dies, Flash manages to sympathize with Peter, and he's like, hey, it's cool, man, look, yeah. And it's just really good. I like that they had a moment like that because it gave new depth to his character, and it made me appreciate him, and it was just really good. There were a lot of characters who had redeeming moments like that. Even like Dennis Leary as dang it, I forget the first name of Gwen's dad, Casey, whatever, Stacy, whatever, I don't know. After he brushes Peter off, when Peter's making his crazy claims about Curt Connors terrorizing the city as the Lizard, he still goes, well, I'll check up on Curt Connors anyway. And that was just another really nice moment that prevented these characters from being stupid, unlikable douchebags. And yeah, it's just overall a lot of character in this movie. It is just exploding with character. And people who say, oh, it just retreads the ground that the old movie stepped on. No, it doesn't do that. There are just so many things they did differently in this movie. It's as different to the Amazing... Okay, you got the Amazing Spider-Man comics and the Ultimate Spider-Man comics. This is as different to the old movies as Ultimate Spider-Man is to Amazing Spider-Man. It's just a very different interpretation of it. The way Uncle Ben dies, the way Spider-Man learns how to use his powers, all these things just feel so fresh and new and different, and it does work really well. And about these people who are saying, yeah, we don't care about what happened to Peter's parents and how they were involved in all this. We don't care about this character development stuff. We just want to say, ba-boom, ba-boom. Look, a movie like The Avengers, that has lots of explosions, but it doesn't have nearly as much character and emotion as something like this. Later in the movie, there's a scene where he needs to get to Oscorp really fast to stop the Lizard who's going to terrorize the city and turn everyone else into mutant lizard thingies. And there are people who he has helped in the past, people who he has saved, who want to help him out. They see on the news that he's injured. Everyone's like rooting for Spider-Man. He's put in a positive light. These people see him as a hero, and they need him, but they're also willing to go out of their way to help him. And it's just such an inspirational, touching, epic moment. You have all these cranes lined up, giving him a straight path to Oscorp that he can easily swing along. And that moment was just so epic. You can say a bunch of explosions are epic, but this was really epic because there was meaning behind it. Like I said, this is just a really emotional movie, and thinking about all that had happened in this movie leading up to this moment, it just feels so great. You want to see Spider-Man win. You're really rooting for him. It is just such an epic scene because of what had been building up to it, because of the meaning behind it. That's what made it epic. And I just can't stress enough just how great this movie is. It's got a lot of fresh new takes on the characters and the things that happen. This is a lot of really cleverly laid out scenes, like before, when Peter's just getting a grasp of how to use his powers. This is a scene where he's messing around in a warehouse, skateboarding and trying to get on the walls to climb them and things like that. And this one point where he starts swinging along on these chains all around the room. And it might sound like kind of a silly scene, but I thought it was really clever because that made it more believable to imagine him swinging around on his webs. Because if he just tried it and the first time got the hang of it right there and then, that would just be really dumb. But no, they have him practice swinging along on these chains around the warehouse. And then they have him practice swinging a few times, just like trying to shoot like one web out at a time and then trying to reach the ground. And they have him practice a few times, and they have him make his costume, but first they have him make a mask. He doesn't go wrestling or whatever. They don't want, like I said, they don't want to repeat a lot of things the old movies did. And, yeah, I just can't stress enough just how great this movie was. I expected it to be a Dark Knight ripoff. I expected it to be bland. I expected it to just be really, really dumb. But no, this movie is truly amazing. There are just so many things that they did right. So many things that I love about it. It's one of the most emotional interpretations of the Spidey on the big screen we've seen. Yeah, it's better than Spider-Man 3. Yeah, definitely. But it's better than Spider-Man 1. As an origin story, it definitely tops that. And I want to say, in some ways, it is even better than Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 was like the best superhero movie by that point. It did so much for superhero movies in general. It allowed people to think about superhero movies more seriously. And then, The Dark Knight perfected that, but it also bred a lot of movies afterwards that were really uninspired and just ripped that off. But I'd say this is the best superhero movie I have seen, besides, those two movies. But in some ways, it is even better than those movies. I think it has a even more emotion than Spider-Man 2. I think it's even more fun than The Dark Knight. It just has so many great qualities, and when I hear these people's criticisms of it, like IGN's review or whatever, I just think, piss off, guys. I don't see what you're saying. I don't know what you're talking about. I looked for the things you criticized this movie for, and I don't see it. It's fun. It's funny. It's like, you look at the old Spider-Man movies, and even though they're a lot of fun, and even though Spider-Man 2 is a great movie, really poignant, as a whole, that series of movies is really kind of dumb and kind of campy. It's still fun. It's still a good series of movies, but that doesn't make it any less stupid. But this movie was very, very smart, and it was very, I don't know, they don't even, one of the things I love most about this movie is that they don't repeat the whole "with great power comes great responsibility." We were all expecting that to come a mile away, and Ben did say something like that, but he worded it differently, more eloquently, and the message was still there. We could instantly see what he was trying to say, but he didn't repeat that tried and true line that I'm honestly tired of hearing all the time. And I guess you could say that reflects the whole movie, because it was fresh, it was new. Overall, The Amazing Spider-Man is worthy of that title. It truly is amazing. It's emotionally charged, but it's also choreographed really well, and the story's really good, and it has a really nice flow. It doesn't feel like it takes that long to get anything done, but it's got a lot of build-up. And like I said, it's just exploding with so much character. There are so many things that I think they did a lot better than in the old movies, like Flash Thompson's interpretation, for example. I like this Flash Thompson. I hated the old Flash Thompson. And just, What else can I say? I'm repeating myself at this point. Go watch The Amazing Spider-Man. Don't listen to people who are bitching about stuff that isn't even there. Just go watch it, have a grand old time. It is so much better than I expected it to be. I love this movie. It really got me like riled up inside just because of how epic it is. So yeah.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man,